Hi, in this video, I will show you how we can configure Kubernetes RBACs configurations on AWS EKS cluster. Okay, so here main focus is on, how do we maintain RBAC related configurations on Kubernetes cluster. Okay, here we are taking AWS EKS cluster, which is an example of managed Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so here what we do is on top of the EKS cluster, we try to configure the required configurations around RBACs, that is Kubernetes RBACs. And we also try to evaluate the scenarios around Kubernetes RBACs. Like, when there is an access has been given to a particular IAM user, then how does the Kubectl API response? And when there is a no access has been given, like, how does the, Kubernetes APIs or Kubectl commands response? Okay. So in that case, so this is in that case, so that is the main motive of this demo. And this is the pictorial overview of my demo as you see in this screen. Okay. So where we have a Kubernetes master APIs and we have the RBACs been configured. We have the AWS IAM service, and also we are invoking the, we are invoking the Kubectl from our laptop. And this is how this complete process flows. Okay. At the end, I will explain you regarding these steps. When you invoke, Kubectl command, or when you invoke a, when you invoke a API from the remotely to to your Kubernetes cluster, how does the API response based on our, Kubernetes RBACs related permissions. Okay. So that is the main motive of this demo. So here, to make the demo very fast, what I did is, I have, as usual, I have documented all the commandlets that we need in the form of a JSON file, and this file will be shared in my GitHub repo, and the GitHub repo's link will be shared in this video's description. Please find all the related files which we use in this demo from the repo. Yeah. All right. So here, I have documented all the commandlets. So here you see this is the first section where I will be using EKCTL tool, that is EKS command line tool. I will be using that utility to create the EKS cluster in my AWS account. Okay, so and after that, we run certain commands which are being documented serial wise. So you need to run these commands one after the other from top to bottom. All right. So and we will also see how does the Kubernetes response on RBAC sides when there is a when there is a role has been assigned, when there is no roles are been assigned. All right. Yeah. So what I did is, again, so let me go back to the AWS account. So this is my AWS account. Here I have already pre-created an EKS cluster, which is freshly created EKS cluster. It does not have any configurations. Okay. So to create my EKS cluster, I used EKCTL tool as I explained in last here. Okay. So I used this command. All right. So I used this command to, to create an EKS cluster in my AWS account. Since the creation of AWS EKS cluster takes more than 50 minutes, I have pre-created it just now. And first of all, what I did is I opened the PowerShell tool, PowerShell window. Then from there, I set the context with using AWS CLI, using AWS configure. And this is the access key ID and access key, and this is the reason and output. All right. And after that, I have run this command. So you see, this is the command I ran to create the EKS cluster, which using the EKCTL command line utilities. If your system is not installed with the EKCTL, you can go through this link. Okay. So these are the links are meant for prerequisite. Okay. Where you can go ahead and install the EKCTL in your system. And then from there, you can carry out the steps being documented in this video. So here, I am creating the EKS cluster with using EKCTL create cluster. This is my cluster name. In the node types is T2 large. I'm just using. Since this is only related to the RBAC, so that's the reason I kept keeping my nodes very minimum, that is node 1 only, and at max it can go to 2 nodes. And the reason is US East region, and the zones I'm choosing, these are my zones. Okay. All right. So it has taken more than 15 minutes, and finally it has successfully created the required EKS cluster. So you see the command, the output, right? It says that the EKS cluster RBAC is in US East region is ready now. Okay, so now we are good with this stage. Now let's go to the next step. Okay, so till now we have successfully created the EKS cluster. Okay, the below steps are meant for this demo, that is EKS cluster RBAC related experimentation. You can take it like that. Yeah. So now once I created the EKS cluster, by default my access, in the sense my IAM access, in the sense the IAM credentials being used here, right? So this is the access ID and access key. By default, it has an administrative privilege on the EKS cluster. Okay, that is the reason, by default, when we run a kubectl command on the EKS cluster, which in the same session, you can interact with those, you can interact with the your EKS cluster. That's the reason what I do is I run one kubectl command. So even again, one more requirement is you should have the kubectl installed in your system as well. Okay, if you don't have installed, please do watch my previous videos. I have explained around the kubectl, how to install the kubectl in the Windows system or in your systems and all. Yeah. So now let me run the command called kubectl get nodes. What we are doing is we are just evaluating the the availability of kubectl APIs communication. Okay. What it actually does is it will retrieve the nodes. Okay, as of now, only one node is there and it is responding. In the sense, I have the access. In the sense, my identity has an access to access on the AWS account. By default, if your ID has been used to create an EKS cluster, you will be by default granted as an administrator of that particular EKS cluster. So it's the same administrator access is being used. Henceforth, I was able to communicate to EKS cluster. Okay. All right. So there is one more case. So even not only the administrator is not only the person who has to maintain your application at kubectl at Kubernetes cluster, right? In real time or in real time projects, there are huge members of team will be working on a same EKS cluster because your application is running on a huge cluster. For example, 20 nodes EKS cluster, right? And you have the huge application, huge business application is running. So in that case, the member present in the team will eventually grow. So in that case, RBAC comes and plays a very valid security aspects. In the sense, you are giving the required access to required member. Okay. In the sense, let's say administrator needs a full access, but for example, operator or just a contributor, reader needs a respective permissions. In the sense, they need a minimum level permissions or at least levels of permissions are required in this case. Okay. So in this case, the RBAC feature of Kubernetes comes very handy. And this is the video which helps you to go in that direction. All right. So now let's go to the first command of our demo. That is, we will create one namespace, and in that namespace, we do all our experimentations. So here, what we are doing is we are running the command called kubectl create namespace. So it will do nothing, but it will create a namespace for us. Okay. All right. So the namespace has been created. I can query the, kubectl get namespace. Get ns. Okay. So what it does is it will retrieve the all and namespace. Ns is acronym for namespace. So it has retrieved all the namespace present in the cluster, EKS cluster. So just now we created RBAC test. Okay, this is where we do our all experimentations. Okay. Next one, what I do is I deploy one sample application, that is Nginx application on this EKS cluster with using a deployment, kubectl deployment. All right. So let me do that. So that is then my next command. I will copy this. And what it does is it will deploy a sample pod in our RBAC test namespace. Okay, so let me check the status of that pod. Okay, kubectl get pod. I have to give the namespace, that is RBAC -test. So what it does, it will just retrieve the status of the Nginx pod. So the Nginx pod is up and running now. All right, now on this top of the pod, okay, so we have created a pod, we have created a deployment. All right, so what we do is in this demo we try to give access to a third-party user. So I am a user who has created the EKS cluster, so I will be administrator access. But let's create some third-party user, for example, in my AWS account, and see when we give access to that user, how does the kubectl command responds? When we don't give the access, how does the kubectl command respond? Okay, that is the main motive of this demo. So what I do is I will show you the users will be created right now. So meantime, so let me go to the IAM service while it is running. So what we have to do is, so we have tested till here. So what we do is now we create an IAM user. So the IAM user, let's say RBAC user. Okay, so what we do here, we create an IAM user with using this command. And also we create an access key for it. Okay. All right. So let me do this. So what does actually does? This is the AWS CLI command which will create an IAM user. Okay. So let's see if the IAM user has been created here. If I go to the IAM service and if I go to the users, I should see that user now. All right. So let's go for the IAM users. And we should see one user. All right. I'm showing you from from the scratch to end. So you see, right? So this is the user has been created, which we just now created. So we'll go to the next one. So next one is command to create an access key as well. So let's create the access key and keep it a note of that one, okay? Because we need to use those access keys to log in separately. So let's create the access key for those. All right, so the access key ID and this is the access key secret. So let me copy this because I need these credentials to log in from the from the other side as well. Here, I need to do multiple times switch. Okay, so in the sense, first I have to log in with the admin and show you that it is access. Now, since we have created a third-party user, we log in third-party in the sense RBAC user. So with using this RBAC user, we try to communicate to our kubectl. We will try to communicate to our AWS EKS cluster, and let's see, how does the kubectl command responds. As of now, we just created an IAM user, but that IAM user does not have access on EKS cluster that we created. Let's see how does the kubectl command responds in that cases. So now, okay. So for that one, I have to switch the context. Okay, as of now, I'm a user. Who is I'm? So here I'm an admin here. Okay, so now let me switch the context here. Okay, so let me rerun the command here. Okay, AWS configure again, and I will set the context here with using different user IDs. So nothing but the user ID being given here. So let me use this. So let me use this. This is the access key and this is the secret. So this is the secret. Okay, so let me copy this secret. So now the RBAC user, right? We created one RBAC user with using AWS CLI. So that user context has been set in a separate PowerShell window. You see, this is my separate PowerShell window. All right. So anyways, I will be deleting this user's credentials, after this video. So please don't try to log in with these credentials. Anyways, you can create in your account in your own way. Yeah. All right. So this is the this is the context. So let me check the context. AWS STS get caller identity. Let's see if it is context has been set. Okay. All right. So context is already been set. Now what we do is just now we have created and we logged in. Okay. So we will use these set the another context with using the above credentials. We did it. Okay. Now okay. Next one. So what we do is we do a kubectl apply. Okay. So map and user to kubectl. Now what we do is we create a map in the we create a map. Okay, we create a map with using this YAML file. Let me go to this YAML file. So here it is nothing but it creates a config map. Config map is nothing but it's kind of hash table which gets created in the if you are a PowerShell guy, the hash table, or if you are if you are Python guy, you will understand what is the dictionary. So it kind of a dictionary kind of variable into the respective Kubernetes context. Okay, that's what you can understand by the kind called config map. Okay, so now let's do the config map as per the next step. All right, so for this one, so I have kept this file. Okay, here the API version is version 1, kind is config map, and the name is the name is AWS auth. So this is my config map name, and the namespace is this is my namespace. All right, so the file has been sitting here. So I need to switch the context now. I need to do the CD, okay? All right, so let me do a CD. And here we do run the command. That is the second command. So this is my second command, right? So this is the one command I need to run now. So this command has to be modified a little bit, something like this, all right? So we'll do this. What we are doing with this command, we are just doing the kubectl apply. We are creating a config map in our EKS cluster with using administrative privilege. Okay, so this is the one you see, right? So not to make you confused, so you can have an eye on these contexts. So this is an administrative privilege. Okay, this is administrative privilege. Okay, so whereas the other one, okay, here. The other one is, it's a newly created users newly created user setting. Okay, so you can see here. Okay, so it clearly tells us you must be logged out. Okay, it says the other server has asked the client to provide the credentials. In the sense, since I have already logged with some other session, so that's the reason my session is gone here, and that is what it is actually complaining. Okay, so what I do is I will just kill this session. And I will copy this credentials in the notepad so that I can use it later. So I will keep it here. And right now I need to re-log in again. Okay, so let me log in with using the kubeconfig. So AWS config. I just use the AWS configure. Okay, here I need to change the credentials because the credentials been set right now. It not belongs to the my administrative credentials. Okay, my administration credentials are somewhere else here. I will just take take out those. Anyways, the credentials which I'm sharing here, I will be I will be either renewing those or either I will be disabling those. So that's the reason I'm just sharing in the script. But in the real time, I would recommend not to share with anybody. All right. So that is the highly recommended point. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm just switching the context. Okay, because here we are dealing with the two users. That's the reason we have to do a context switch. All right, so now let's run the command, above command, that is kubectl apply. It should now apply it. All right. You see, right? Earlier, that's all. You just need to know now, right? So earlier, since the context was been set in a parallel window, even though it is been set with a parallel window, the under the hood kubeconfig file was got updated with these different credentials. Okay, because this since the session was been overwritten, that's the reason we were not able to communicate to our EKS cluster because the session was belongs to some other user who does not have access. And that's where the server has asked for the client to provide the credentials. In the sense, it was not authenticated in that case. When I used the administrative credential, then only I was able to do these configurations. Okay, so that proves that that eventually proves that the user which we created, the RBAC user, does not has the access right now. Even though let me show you again. Okay, so let me log in again for your case. So here I will open the one more PowerShell session. I will set the context, but now this time I will use the RBAC user. So this is my administrative permissions, and this is my RBAC user. Okay, so now let me again set the context with using RBAC user, AWS configure. And now this time I change the credentials. Okay, so I use this access key and secret like this. All right, so let me use this, and this is my secret. Let it be US East one, then JSON. All right. So now we have set the context. We can check by using command if the context has been set. Get caller identity. So what does this command? This command tells you that the context has been set. Here you go. The context is set now. Yeah. All right. So now now we go to the command. Next command. Okay. Next command in our in our file. So next command is we do verify kubectl get parts. Okay. So let's see. It should throw the error. Okay. That is what the test case is. You see, verify the newly created user after login, and it should throw the error. So let's see. Okay. Let's see what it shows actually. Here you go. The error from the server, forbidden. Why it is showing forbidden? Because this user does not has the access. Okay, that is where, in the sense, a third-party user cannot come and access the resources present in the EKS cluster or Kubernetes cluster. Okay, that is the one use case we have just now saw. Okay, now let's go to the next case. Okay, all right. So let me close this because we are done with this access. Now we need to again turn back. Okay, again we have to run this command again. Okay, let me run this command kubeconfig, and I need to give my administrative credentials again. Okay, because the credentials gets overwritten at every stages, every instance of login. All right, so that is the right part. So let me copy this. All right, so now what I do is I will run the command. So we ran this command, and there it got an error. Since we are using the administrative privilege, why it is administrative? Because that user has created the EKS cluster, which has the by default, by inheritance, it gets the administration privilege. So now I'm running the command called kubectl get parts. We should see the parts. Okay. So this is the difference because that user does not have access. That's the reason it throw the error. Now let's go to the next case where we provide the third party user, but we provide only to certain resources. In the sense, only one specific namespace only we give the access to the RBAC user, and let's see how does it responds when it accesses to that particular namespace, and how does it responds when it accesses the other namespace. Okay, that is the main motive of the next steps. So for that one, what we have to do is we have to create a role and we have to bind that role into the EKS cluster. For that case, I have the two YAML files. One is the RBAC user role binding. So let me go to this file and I will run the command kubectl. Okay. So here kind is the role and the API is the authorization API of the Kubernetes version 1. Namespaces we are targeting to the RBAC test and the pod name is pod reader. Okay. So next one is API group. Okay, indicates that the core APIs and the resources we are targeting the permissions pods. And pods, what are the verbs is nothing but the actions, in the sense the permissions being let on the resource. Here the resource is pod. On the pod, a user can do this role can do list, get, and watch. All right. Similarly, we have the we have the API group called extensions and apps. And here resources deployments, and the deployment you can do get, list, and watch. Okay, so this is the RBAC definition, you can call it in terms of in world of Kubernetes world. So this is how we define the RBACs. Similarly, once the role has been created, now you have to bind that role to a particular user. That job, okay, that kind of activity we call it as a role binding, as the namespace, okay, as the keyword says, role binding. Okay, you are binding a role to some user. So here it is, a kind is role binding, and this is the API version, and the name is something I have given, read pods RBAC test. Here kind is user. Okay, the subjects. Okay, under the subject map we are using kind user, and the name of the user is RBAC user because that is what the user is. And API groups is, this is the RBAC authorization Kubernetes API. Okay, so these are the very mandatory format of. These are the very mandatory syntaxes that you need to follow, okay, in this YAML file. And it has to be in this format only. Then the role reference. The role is nothing but we are creating a pod reader, okay. If I go back, so here we created a role name called pod reader, okay. That role is been assigned to that user. Who is the user? RBAC users. And this is the API groups, okay. All right, so this is the definition of the role and binding role YAML files. Now what we do, we apply those YAML files with using what? With using the administrative privilege. Okay, so now again, let me not make you confused. So I will show this console. Okay, I will show the Kubernetes. This is the one. Okay, you have to look it here and identify. Yes, it is a administrative console. So now let me run this command. I have to do something like this, backward space, and this one. So now let me run these commands. So kubectl apply. What we are doing is we are creating a RBAC role in the EKS cluster. All right, so the pod reader role is successfully created. You see, right? Role RBAC authorization kubernetes.io pod reader role has been created. Similarly, let's create the role binding as well. All right. So similarly, what we are doing is I'm just above role has been binded to the user RBAC user. All right. So RBAC users. Okay. So now what we did is RBAC user role binding is being done now. Now what we have to do is we have to go to the what we do is we have to switch the context now to the that user and try to access now. Now it should be accessible. Okay. So for that one again, let me open the PowerShell session. I do set the context again. AWS configure. Okay, so let me do AWS configure again, and this time I have to use RBAC user credentials. So this is my RBAC user credentials. So this is my RBAC user. So again, okay, this is the secret. I'm giving the secret. So this is my secret, and let me give the reason and JSON by defaults, and let me check this context, that is STS get caller identity. So what it does is we are just checking the context now whether it has been set to RBAC user. Okay, so now these are the credentials belongs to RBAC user. Now let's do the test. Let's try to access the resources, nothing but pods, and now that should be, and that should not throw any errors. Okay, and we should be seeing the pods. That is the test case. All right, kubectl get pods. Here you go. Okay, so this is that's all. Okay, so here you go. Now the RBAC user, now this user got an access and he is able to see the, list the pods present in this RBAC namespace. Here, to be specific, we have given access to the only one, namespace, that is RBAC namespace. There is a one more use case. Okay, if the same user tries to query the other namespace, he will be restricted. Okay, he will be, he will not be permitted in general words. Yeah. So let's see. Okay, that one as well. So let me do that. Here you go. It has thrown the error called forbidden. Okay. So this is how RBAC functionality works in Kubernetes world. Okay. So this is how we restrict users in a big team, and also we restrict the permissions based on the needs. That is least permissions, least privilege methodology for security purpose or any kind of management purpose. Yeah. All right, so I have shown you the required things to be shown here. Finally, let me quickly walk you through here what it actually happened. Okay, so here from the from the kubectl interface, when we have given the access to our RBAC user, so this is where the flow starts. Okay, it generates a signed STS URL and passes the AWS identity to the Kubernetes master API. Then this API verifies that particular user by checking the tokens with the AWS IAM services, and from there from the authenticated token is returned to the master, and the masters from the masters that token will be evaluated against the Kubernetes master RBAC service. Okay, now once the RBAC matches that particular token, then in the sense that way the Kubernetes gets authenticated. Okay, Kubernetes authorizes the particular users, and once the user has been authorized, then automatically the actions are being performed. The actions which we see here. Okay, so on some of the namespaces, the user is being allowed, and some of the namespaces the user is not allowed. Why? Because that is what we call it as a role definition and role binding, and that is what we call it as a RBAC at Kubernetes world. All right. So with that note, I have successfully shown you the complete from the scratch to end required things to be shown here. Finally, a kind request: please do subscribe my channel. That would really encourage me a lot. Okay. So with that note, thank you. Thanks a lot.